Hi there, and once again I'm going to show you a little video on something which you guys have been asking about for quite some time, I know, and I'm finally getting around to doing it. And this is all about watercolour white, because I know that some people struggle with using watercolour white. They kind of go, oh, it's white paint, you know. So I understand that. I can fully understand where you're coming from. Now, you all know that my go-to watercolour white is the Sae opaque white, which is quite nice, and kind of quite like that one. But I've never really tried other whites, believe it or not. It's just something I've always kind of stuck with what I know. So because I put the question on how to, what other people use for watercolour white, I thought I'd try, as I say, 5 different ones out and see how they perform. So what I'm going to do is go through a little video. I'm going to make a video. This is my test one, so I'll make another one of these on how I created this to kind of give them a go and see how each one performs. So what we'll be going through is the SAA version, the Cotman, the Sennelier Aquarelle, the Windsor Newton Professional one, which is quite nice, and also the Horadam, which is quite a nice one as well. So I'm going to go through all these 5 different ones and show you my findings at the end of it. And let's get stuck in. Right, watercolour whites. Now, here we go. You ready for this? Thank you for everybody, first of all, for your recommendations and ideas on what whites to use. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to show you the ones I've got here. Now everything's going to fall down my board here, so it's at a slight angle. So we've got the SAA one, which we're going to test. We've got the Winsor Newton Cotman range, which is the more student quality, more than professional quality. So we've got that one. Okay. Then we've got the Sennelier, which is the Aquarelle one, which is this one, which we'll test. And then we've also got Winsor Newton, the professional range. And we've also got the Horadam Aquarelle, which is this particular one is here. So what I want to do, I want to go through all these. I'm going to look at the coverage, the colour, in other words, by putting colour over the top as well. Thinning of the paint, how well it thins and how that looks. And also when you're overlaying white paint as well, when you're actually putting one layer of white on top of the other. So I want to look at all these different things. And the reason I want to look at these things, because these are the kind of techniques that we use in our tutorials. On the market, there's a lot of different white paints out there, be it watercolour white, even gouache white or gouache, depends how you pronounce it. Some watercolour whites are not opaque, so please bear that in mind. Some of the ones which I've looked at tend to be semi-transparent or even transparent. You think, well, hang on a minute, I'll need something that's going to be kind of opaque, something that I can put another colour over the top. Okay, what I'm going to do, I'm going to go for the SAA one first, and I'll use this one just to kind of test out these little pointers and see how well it performs. The other 4 I'll do off camera, and that's only because the video was so long. It'll take a long time to edit a video just on using watercolour white. So and I'll give you my findings at the end of that, obviously, and let you know how I get on and what each one kind of looks like and how each one performs. Okay, so I'll see you shortly. Well, I'll just get my paints in my mixing palette, which is this one here, and I'll make a start. Right, so start off with the SAA watercolour white. So I'll just put a little bit of that in my palette first of all. You've got to be careful with these, because usually you can squeeze the side of the tube and it will shrink back in, but sometimes it doesn't, which is a little bit irritating, but hey ho, you know. Roll it to a creamy consistency, and here we go. Right, so coverage and colour. So what I mean by that, I'm going to paint a block or circle, whatever it might be. Just paint a basic block, and we'll just see about the coverage on this first. I've used a black background. This is just black. So that'll be interesting to see how much it kind of smudges with that black underneath, because thing with watercolour white as well, when you go over the top of it, it can, if you keep going over the top, it will pick up that paint underneath, and this will end up looking grey. So this is the first layer, so just put that one on first, just to there. That'll do. Is that neat enough? Nah, it'll do, won't it? It'll do. It's only for testing out. I might just come down a little bit further as well. And what I might do as well, just put a little line down the side so we can test out on a line as well if need be. Thinning. Right, here we go. So I want a watery version of this now, so I'm going to go right into the bottom of the palette. I want to see how well this fades, because I quite like the idea that when I had the paint on the paper, is that it does fade quite well. So this is very watery now. Well, it's quite bright at the moment, I know, but it will fade as it dries. Try not to go with the same area more than once, as I've always said with my kind of watercolour lessons which we do on here. is just go over the area once with the white, otherwise you will start picking up that paint underneath. Just to tidy up that little edge there. And let's do another line down the side. So that is quite watery, milky kind of consistency. I'm looking for with that one. Now overlaying will be done once the first layer is dry. So again, I'm going to go for a creamy consistency white, and again I'm going to work on the same method by tickling it into the paint. And I want this paint to be quite thick, as I say, just about paintable. Just then roll it, pull away, so we've got a reasonable point on the brush. And we'll do the same again with this one. This should be the same as the top one, but obviously once it's dry as this, I want to go over the top again with yet another layer and see how well this particular paint lays, or layers. You know what I mean. So again, just very gently, just see how it goes on. It's all about playing as well and getting used to the paints and getting used to kind of how the paints perform. That'll do. And then I'll just bring a little line down here, just with the tip of the brush, just about anyway. It's quite a worn brush, this one now. So I want to give this chance to dry now, and then we'll try the coverage once it's nice and dry. I'll just straighten that up a little bit for you as well. Right, see you in a minute. Right, that should be nice and dry. So I'll just give it a quick blast with the hairdryer, believe it or not. So it's lovely and dry. So I'm going to go back to my watercolour whites again. I want to try, first of all, look at the overlaying. So I'm going to do that one first. So I'm going to twiddle it in there, get it nice and thick, just about paintable again, without the line breaking. And then back into this one. I want to see what it's like when we put 2 coats of watercolour white on. I'm going to go the opposite way. Not that it makes any difference really. Shouldn't do. Again, it's going to be the same issue. If you keep going over the same place time and time again, you'll start picking up the paint underneath. You start disturbing the layer of white underneath, and then the layer of black underneath that. So you've got to be very careful whenever you do anything like this with watercolour white. So that's the second layer, and that's actually quite reasonable, that, isn't it? There you go, look, I've even gone over to the edge. It shows how dry that is now. And I'll do the same again on this little line as well. Yeah, that's okay. See how faint this has dried as well for the thinning side of it. So when you've got a really watery come milky mixture of Sae Watercolor white, it's quite a nice effect. It's nice and kind of subdued. It's set back a little bit, even though when we first put it on, as you know, it's quite bright. So that's much better on there. So bear with me. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to get a little bit of, bear with me a minute, I've got the wrong thing out first. This is Carmine Red, so I'm going to go for here. So I'm going to put a little bit of that in my palette initially, away from the white, for obvious reasons. So there you go, there's plenty in there. Just put my lid back on again. Remember that if it still keeps coming out, try very lightly squeezing the side of the tube, because that will help it kind of sink back into the tube. It doesn't always work, but it does sometimes. So it's well worth bearing that in mind. Okay, so Carmine Red. A little bit of water in there as well. And do I need a mixing brush? Not in this case, because I just want to use that straight from the tube with a little bit of water added. Lovely bright colour. I've chosen this colour to see how well it covers, because red is a very strong, vibrant colour. You know, if you use Carmine Red or Scarlet Lake or even Alizarin Crimson, lovely vibrant colours. But this will be a good tester actually for this as well, using a good colour on it. So, okay, colour. I'm going to do the bottom half of this in colour. But, again, because it's white, as I've always said to you on the tutorials as well, when you add colour over the top of the white, do it in one fell swoop. Got it? Otherwise, it will disturb that white paint. So I'm going to go about halfway down roughly. Take a little bit of paint off my brush, because it's quite a lot on there. I've got to be fair and do the same with the other ones as well. You can see while I do the other ones off camera, because there's a lot of work involved. I'll pick some of that up a minute, and then I'll go down there. And we'll see how well that dries, because that'll be quite interesting to see how well it dries. So really, what I've gone through on this so far, that's all I need to do on the Sae one. I've looked at the coverage, i.e. one coat, just one layer of paint, which is really, really thick stuff, just about paintable, without the line breaking, la yada yada, you know what I mean. So I looked at the colour overlay. I want to get that chance to dry and see how well it dries on there. It's not disturbed the white paint underneath at the moment. That's not shifted. But if I do keep going over it will move. I've looked at the thinning, so how thin it would be if I'm using like a watery or milky consistency. And also the overlaying when we've got more than one coat of white. So that's just 2 coats of white paint on there. So that's all those different things I've looked at. And these are the kind of things that I tend to look at within the tutorials that we do. So I want to do the same thing again for all the other ones, so all 4 of these, exactly the same process. So I'm going to crack on and do that off camera because it would just be a very, very long video otherwise. And I'll come back to you when that's all on there and I'll kind of tell you my findings. Alright, so I'll see you shortly when that's all done. Right, so that's still drying on there. I'll just level that up a little bit more for you. So what do we get? Okay, so we've got 5 different watercolour whites. We've got 5 different tests. And when we look at all these, each one has performed slightly different as well. So we'll start off with the SAA. As you know, this is using my go-to kind of watercolour white, only because it's the one I've got used to over the years and the one I've mainly concentrated on using. So the SAA one's really good for the coverage. The overlaying of colour, as in yellow or red, whatever colour you want, to a watery consistency as well. That's watery. This one's a creamy consistency as in the red, over the top of the white. The overlaying's gone on really nicely, just by one swoop, as I said, just one go in one direction. The white itself is fine. That's gone on really well just as a one coat. You can see it fairly well covers. You can still see the black underneath. You can still see that kind of shining through a little bit. So that's okay for that. The thinning itself has gone once again fine. It's kind of lightened down quite considerably. And I've thinned down the watercolour white for all of these down to like a watery, kind of milky consistency, kind of in between the two. So each one's been thinned the same kind of consistency. The overlaying of colour again has gone on okay on that, and the thinning down's fine. It's not disturbed the black underneath by doing so. The overlaying, in other words, more than one coat of watercolour white, how does that work? So you can see on this particular one, it's covered really well indeed. So I'll probably give that, the overall coverage of that, like an 8 out of 10, because I can just still see the colouring coming through. So the coverage, 7 out of 10. The overall coverage, I'd say 8, nearly 9 out of 10 for that. The thinning is good, as I say, and the main thickness is like toothpaste. It's really thick stuff to kind of paint with, so it's quite ideal really, so you can really water it down. So that's the SAA one. The Cotman one, we'll go on to that one next. I'll try not to get too long-winded about all of this. The Cotman one, yeah, very disappointing. The main coverage for the white was, I'd probably give a 5 out of 10. You can see the black paint still coming through, nowhere near the same as the SAA. The coverage on the yellow, because this is quite dull for one coat, the coverage on the yellow, not very good. The yellow, however, did not disturb the white, even though all of these whites are classed as opaque, okay? Not semi or anything like that. The same applies to the red. It covered okay, in other words, it didn't disturb the white underneath in one go. But even so, very disappointing on the coverage on the like a creamy consistency, as in all of these on the top row. So disappointing with that. The thinning itself, yeah, really well actually. As you can see, it's thinned out really nicely. And the overlaying of colour was pretty good as well. It didn't disturb the white paint underneath. Again, just one fell swoop. The overlaying, so more than one coat, so in this case again, all of this row, 2 coats of paint. Yeah, you can see it's not covered that well. You can still see the black paint showing through, nowhere near the same as the SAA. And I'd probably give that a 6, maybe 7 out of 10. The main one I'd give a 5 out of 10 for the main coverage in one coat. So really that's what you're looking at for the Cotman. Disappointing, I'd put it quite low down on the priority list. But then again, you have to remember that the Cotman range are the student range. That is a student range for the Windsor Newton. So therefore, if you go for the Windsor Newton, well, I'll get to that one in a minute. Professional range, we'll go into that in a bit. You can see the difference. Okay. The next one is going to be the Aquarelle. Alright, so that's going to be the next one, which is the Sennelier. Yeah, I quite like that, you know. I quite like it as a watercolour white. It covers quite well. The coverage on that I'd probably give as a one coat 7 out of 10. You can still see the grey coming through, not quite as much as the SAA. The overall, as in colour over the top of there, overlaying the colour, that's gone on quite well actually. I quite like the way that's gone on. And the same applies to the red, so that's really covered quite well in the sense. It's not bad as a general paint, it's pretty good. I know it's not a cheap make, I know it's quite a well-known brand as well. Thinning the paint down to the same consistency, all the same consistency, very similar to the watercolour white, as you can see, so very, very similar to that for the watercolour white, for the SA, should I say. The overlaying's gone really well. It's not blurred the white paint in any way, and that applies to this one as well. Because you find also when you overlay, like this one here, look, when you go back to the Cotman, it's blurred the edges of that. Because you find what will happen as well is that when you put a layer of colour over the top of the watercolour white, you want that white to stay put, so it's got a nice sharp edge around there. Whereas when you look at the Cotman one back along, that one's all blurred out. The SAA is fine, as you can see. So the Aquarelle one, the Sinellia one, has covered really well. It's not blurred the edges out. You can also see that effect through the for the thinning one, where you got the nice sharp edge of the white just underneath the yellow. So that's really well. I'm quite pleased with that, really. Thinning's really good, very similar, as I say, to the SAA. And the overlaying, yeah, very good. I'd probably give that maybe a 9 out of 10 on the coverage, probably a little bit more than the SAA, to be honest with you. The only downfall I find with that one, when you put the second coat on, it always feels tacky. So it's quite a tacky paint. Even when it's really bone dry, you can still feel like a bit of a tackiness to it. Whereas you get nothing on that one, or any of the other ones, just that's got a bit of a tacky feel to it. Which kind of puts me off a little bit, if to be honest with you, because if you put this against glass, so when you're doing your painting, you put it behind glass, and the glass touches the paint, you don't want it sticking to the glass. Okay, but normally you have a mounting now, I know, it should space it, but you never know. If that paper warps and twists underneath the glass and touches the glass, you don't want this sticking. Okay. Winsor Newton Professional is our next one. Now that's pretty good. I quite like that. It's, to be honest with you, I do like that. The coverage on the main one coat is really, really good, as you can see on here. So I'd give that probably about an 8 out of 10. Which is going to be one more than SAA. You can just see it's compared to the SAA one, it covers quite well. It covers more than the Sinellia one. So Winsor Newton so far looking pretty good, quite a high climber. The coverage again using the yellow over the top, which is the Gambo yellow. That's covered really well actually. That stayed on there very nice, very sharp, very neat. The edge again is quite sharp and neat. The edge on here is quite sharp and neat. So the colour covering really, really well. As for the thinning, yeah, I mean, look at the thinning on this, very, very nicely indeed. In fact, that's neater than the SAA. So, hey, and it's a little bit neater than the Aquarelle as well. So, the Sinellia, I keep calling it Aquarelle, well, that's what it is, I know. But the coverage for the 2 layers of coverage is really good. So it's not tacky or anything, not like this one. Okay. So it covers really well. So 2 coats, really, really good. Very impressed with that. In fact, I'd give that a 9 out of 10. So for the main coverage, I'll probably give that maybe an 8 out of 10. And for the double coat coverage, I'll give it a 9 out of 10. So far, that's probably the best one. As for the next one, the Horodam, however you pronounce it. Again, single coverage, not bad actually. Another 8 out of 10 for that. The coverage with the colour, again, is not blurred the edge or anything like that, which very often can be the case. And that's covered really well. The red applies the same way, so the coverage on that for the colour and for the single coat on its own, really, really good. The thinning of the paint, disappointing. The same consistency as all of these, like a milky, kind of watery, milky consistency. And you can see it started picking up the black paint off the board, off the paper, which is terrible, really, which is upsetting, really. Because sometimes I like to go in with a very thin water mix, just kind of give a bit of a highlight there. There's a little bit of a hint of highlight. And that was quite disappointing, I'm afraid. Whereas that one hasn't, that one hasn't, that one has, and that one hasn't. As for the double coat, the dual coat, 2 coats, takes one. Anyway, as for the double coat, that's gone on really well, actually, quite like that. I'd give that a 9 out of 10. That's pretty well covered, apart from a little bit down here, probably when I got a little bit less on the brush. But that's really well covered on 2 coats, so quite impressed with that. So my overall findings and my personal preference will be, so the worst is going to go first. You ready for this? Can you guess what the worst one will be? Yes, you got it. I know, the Cotman one. I know, but you got to remember this is the budget brand, and you have to bear that in mind. As I said, they're all classed as opaque, but Cotman is going to be 5, so that's 5th in place. Second, I would probably give the Horadam, which is a shame really, because the only thing that put me off on that was the fact that it disturbed the black paint when I put the watery version on, which was disappointing really, but the majority of it is pretty good actually. So if that's what you have in your kit, yeah, use it, no problem at all. Okay, as for 3rd place, get drum roll please, here we go. The Sennelio one, the Aquarelle, was really good as well. I do like that. It's a nice paint. Apart from, again, it's in 3rd because, you know why? Because of that tackiness to the paint, even when it's bone dry. Bit disappointing. 2nd, I'd say SAA. Not because I'm a die-hard fan of SAA paints, because I do like that particular one, as you very well know. But it's a nice paint. It works really well. You can see the effect you get from all the different kind of testings which are done on there. And as you guessed, the top one for this one is going to be the Winsor & Newton Professional Range. And that particular one is this one here. There we go. So the Titanium White Winsor & Newton Series 1. And it is an opaque colour. It's very, very good. I must admit, I'm quite impressed. If I didn't have so many versions of SAA, I've got about 3 tubes that in my painting kit at the moment, I would start to buy this particular one. So between the two, I would go Winsor & Newton or the SAA Opaque White. So there you go. That's giving some ideas on my findings using different watercolour whites on these particular 5. Now, if you have any of these, let me know how you get on. If you don't have these particular ones and you use something different and you get on with it really well, please put a post down below, just down there, look, and let everybody, not just myself, let everybody know how you get on with it. Do the same kind of testing. Okay? So I'll talk to you all again very soon, and bye-bye for now.